This is the Mariah album I wish I could delete from existence. This one is going to get me cancelled by the locals. The Mariah album for casual listeners. So calling it a flop is pure revisionist history. It's a genuinely excellent Mariah Carey record, full stop. Bye Bye is awful. Cancel me. I don't care. Butterfly isn't her best album. This was Mariah leaning into chaos and giving us something gloriously imperfect. It's the album that changed pop, R&B, and remix culture all at once. Mariah Carey has 16 studio albums. Today, I'm ranking every single one of them from worst to best. Yes, this is where friends become enemies and enemies become friends. This is not some academic, objective take. This is one man's warped Mariah truth. And if you disagree, and you probably will, I'll fight you in the comments. I'm James, and this is TrendyPOP, where a 40-something guy clings to his 90s and 2000s playlists while trying to make sense of pop culture today. Let's hit play on this Mariah countdown. Okay, so in at number 16, the proud winner of the title of Worst Mariah Carey Album is Merry Christmas to You. This is the Mariah album I wish I could delete from existence. Merry Christmas to You, or as I like to call it, Merry Christmas to Why, the sequel nobody asked for and the one that makes me wince every time I think about it. Let's be generous and start with the positives, because there are a few. Oh Santa is genuinely brilliant. It's playful, it's bouncy, it feels like it belongs in the Christmas canon. Christmas Time is in the Air Again is elegant and classy, full of warmth. And When Christmas Comes is lush and soulful. It's a track that could actually sit next to the best moments on her 1994 Christmas album. And her Oh Holy Night performance during this era, spine-tingling, iconic, and unforgettable. If this had been released as a short EP with just those 4 songs, I would be praising it to the heavens. But instead, we got a full-length album, and that's where the horror begins. Auld Lang Syne is absolutely horrific. It's not just bad, it's embarrassing. The kind of recording that makes you question whether the producers were playing a cruel prank. One Child is saccharine to the point of nausea. Here Comes Santa Claus is frankly unlistenable. It makes me want to rip off my own arm and beat myself with it. And then there's the duet with John Legend that was released as a single. Mariah Carey doesn't need John Legend on her Christmas single. She is Christmas. What makes it even more confusing is that critics actually gave this album positive reviews at the time, which just goes to show critics cannot be trusted. For Lambs, this was a painful reminder that even geniuses sometimes misstep. To be clear, I don't begrudge Mariah making a second Christmas record. After all, she practically invented the modern Christmas album with her debut in '94. But this isn't an evolution of that legacy. It's a patchwork of filler with a few good tracks buried inside. Merry Christmas to You isn't just her worst Christmas album. It's her worst album, full stop. It doesn't just sit at the bottom of my ranking. It's dug itself a basement below the bottom. In my universe, this album does not exist. There's an EP, Oh Santa, Christmas Time is in the Air Again, When Christmas Comes, I love that song, and Oh Holy Night. That's it. Package those 4 tracks, throw the rest in the bin, and pretend the album never happened. And on that note, in at number 15 is Merry Christmas. Mariah doesn't just sing Christmas. She is Christmas. Before 1994, Christmas albums were filler, something artists tossed out between real records, destined for the bargain bin. Then Mariah Carey came along with Merry Christmas. She didn't just release a seasonal album, she redefined the entire genre. Of course, we have to start with All I Want for Christmas Is You, a song so omnipresent that it's practically public property. It doesn't just climb the charts every December, it dominates them, re-entering at number 1 nearly 3 decades later. It's joy in 3.5 minutes, and it prints her an annual check bigger than most people's lifetime earnings. For many casual listeners, Mariah Carey isn't the woman who sang Vision of Love or We Belong Together. She's the Christmas queen. But Merry Christmas is more than just that juggernaut single. Miss You Most at Christmas Time is quietly devastating. It's a ballad about longing during the holidays, and it's one of the most emotional songs in her catalog. I love it. Christmas, Baby Please Come Home is exuberant, a nod to Darlene Love that proves that Mariah could channel that 60s wall of sound, Phil Spector production with ease. And then there's my favorite, God Rest You Merry Gentlemen, sung a cappella. It's chilling, stripped to just her voice, showing off a level of vocal purity and harmony that few singers could even dream of. The traditional carols, of course, get their due. Silent Night is reverent, hushed, almost sacred in its delivery. Joy to the World isn't just gospel glory, it's also a house remix, and honestly, one of the most underrated Mariah dance tracks to play at Christmas. After Merry Christmas, suddenly it became cool for big stars to do holiday albums. Leona Lewis, Kylie Minogue, Ariana Grande, all following the template that Mariah set in 1994. She turned what was once a career afterthought into an entire industry. This album is a non-negotiable in December. I can go the entire year without hearing a single track, but the first week of December, it's out. It's background for decorating the tree, foreground for Christmas Eve, the soundtrack to the season. But outside of December, it doesn't live in my heavy rotation. That's why it sits so low in my ranking, not because it isn't brilliant, but because it's seasonal. If you only own one Christmas album, it should be Merry Christmas by Mariah Carey. If you listen to it in July, you're unhinged. Next up at number 14 is, and I may get some hate in the chat for this, Here for It All. 6 years after Caution, Mariah finally released Here for It All. And let's be honest, the wait had built anticipation to impossible levels. Fans were wondering, would this be her great late career statement, her next Daydream or Butterfly, or would it be safe, mid-tempo Mariah? The truth is, it's somewhere in between. It's not a disaster. In fact, it has some truly great moments, but it also doesn't quite climb into the top tier of her catalog for me. Let's talk about the songs that do shine. Play This Song is stunning. Bright, shiny, with an optimism that makes you wish she leaned into this vibe even more. It would have slotted perfectly onto Mimi or even Charmbracelet. Then there's Jesus I Do, the clear crown jewel of the record in my opinion. Heartfelt, classic, timeless. It's one of those late career gems we'll revisit for years to come. It's basically Studio 54's answer to Fly Like a Bird. Disco gospel, uplift with sincerity at its core. I Won't Allow It is cheeky fun. Playful, sassy, Mariah still in fine form. Nothing is Impossible is a solid ballad drawing from her traditional strengths. And In Your Feelings is tender and warm, the kind of understated ballad that grows on you with each listen. And I'm willing to admit I've not had as much time with this album, but here are my weaker cuts. Type Dangerous and Sugar Sweet feel like they were written with TikTok in mind. Memeable phrases, but musically thin. They're fun once, but they don't hold up on repeat. Confetti and Champagne is mid background listening at best. My Love doesn't really land for me. Production-wise, it's notable that she worked again with The Stereotypes, who contributed to Caution on Stay Long Love You, one of my favorites. You can hear her trying to recapture that kind of sleek, modern edge, but where Caution was tight and concise and often up-tempo, Here for It All leans heavily into the kind of mid-tempo range, and I'm not really in a mid-tempo space right now. I wanted euphoric, motivational Mariah. Instead, this plays more like a reflective, steady record. Still, perspective is important. This is Mariah's first studio album in 6 years, and in today's pop landscape, many artists from her generation have retired from releasing new material altogether. The fact that she's still writing, still recording, and still offering us flashes of brilliance like Jesus I Do is something to be thankful for. Here for It All is her memoirs of the 2020s. Cohesive, mid-tempo, with some highlights, but it's unlikely to top anyone's list. And that's fine. Not every album needs to be a masterpiece. Sometimes a middle-tier Mariah record is still better than most people's best work, let's be honest. 6 years later, I'll take a mid-tier Mariah album and say thank you. Next, at 13, Me, I Am Mariah, the elusive chanteuse. The title alone deserves to be framed in a museum of pop culture. It's absurd, it's self-aware, it's meme-worthy, and it's also perfectly Mariah. At a point in her career when she was no longer competing for chart dominance, she was leaning into legacy, and this record arrived 4 years after Memoirs. And the wait in between was full of false starts. Remember Triumphant, Get 'Em? Terrible. I like the video. The boxing ring setup has a certain charm, but musically it's bottom tier Mariah. Then came Almost Home from Disney's Oz the Great and Powerful. That one I love. It's lush, cinematic, underrated. By the time the album itself finally landed in 2014, expectations were weirdly high. Cry opened the record, fine enough ballad, but not an electrifying start. Then came Faded, and here's where things get really, really good. Faded is one of her best later career tracks. Lush, aching, elegant. It would have sat comfortably on Daydream or even Butterfly. Let's get some love for Faded in the chat. Dedicated with Nas followed, nostalgic, cool, a nod to her hip-hop ties and the history. And then we got #Beautiful with Miguel, which should have been a #1 single. It peaked at number 15 on the Billboard thanks to a botched digital release. But it's one of her best singles of the 2010s, in my opinion. The chemistry with Miguel is electric. The video is pure glamour. And the song itself, effortless. #Beautiful is the number one single that never was. Other highlights? Make It Look Good. It's a great track that's pure class. You Don't Know What to Do with Wale. Disco Sparkle, the kind of track that makes you wish she'd lean more heavily into dance floor energy more regularly. Meteorite is hypnotic, repetitive in the best way. Camouflage is a lovely ballad. And The Art of Letting Go, which is my personal favorite on the record. It was supposed to be a single, but kind of fizzled. Darkchild produced, and it's haunting. Elegant, and honestly ahead of its time. You could slot it onto Here for It All today and it would fit in perfect. Then we hit the lows. You're Mine Eternal is a limp attempt at recreating We Belong Together. Straight to the bin. Thirsty is fun but disposable. Supernatural, featuring Dem Babies, is sweet in sentiment but indulgent in execution. I'm happy for her children and I'm happy for her that she's happy with them, but I don't need them on a record. Money is dreadful. One More Try, her George Michael cover, should have been transcendent. Two legends, one song, but it just doesn't land for me. Heavenly has the bones of something epic, but the overproduced vocals really ruin it for me. Still, this is not a bad album. It's uneven, but underrated. When it works on Faded, #Beautiful, Make It Look Good, and The Art of Letting Go, it proves she was still capable of brilliance. It's not top tier, but it's better than its reputation. And honestly, that title guarantees its immortality. Okay, in at number 12, Memoirs of an Imperfect Angel. Memoirs is one of the strangest contradictions in my Mariah fandom. If you look at my Last FM, it's my most played Mariah album. And yet when I actually stop and think about it, I don't really rate it that highly. It's mid-tier Mariah, cohesive, listenable, but rarely soaring. The Dream and Tricky Stewart produced most of the album, which means it has a very consistent sound that's both its strength and its weakness. Cohesion is great, but on Memoirs, cohesion tips into monotony. Everything sort of blends into a silky, slow jam haze. It flows beautifully, but you rarely sit up and say that's a definitive Mariah moment, although there are a few. The lead single was Obsessed, and let's be clear, it was a cultural moment. The "Why Are You So Obsessed With Me" line became a meme before we even had the word meme on our mind. The video with Mariah dressing in drag as Eminem was brilliant, but musically, Obsessed is fine. Catchy, sure, but nowhere near her top tier singles. It peaked at number 7 on the Hot 100, but the impact was far more cultural than musical, I would say. Then there's Hate You, having a typical emotional upset. Yes, the acronym is clunky, but the song itself is actually gorgeous. Mariah leans heavily into her upper whistle register, and it's widely considered to be a Minnie Riperton homage. The Lambs love this one, and I do too. Well, I am a lamb. There was even a planned remix sampling Ghost Town DJ's My Boo that never got an official release. I had a bootleg, and I was obsessed with it. It was so much fun. Up at My Face is another highlight. The lyric about even a nail technician with a whole lot of gel and acrylic is utterly peak Mariah wit, and the Lego block metaphor, completely brilliant. Standing O has bite more than just friends, is a breezy, fun track. But then the filler starts to pile up. Candy Bling is saccharine in the worst way. Ribbon is forgettable. Inseparable doesn't really stick. The Impossible is just okay, and then it even gets a reprise it doesn't need. Angel's Cry feels like Bye Bye Part 2, and I didn't even want Part 1. The album closes with a cover of I Want to Know What Love Is, and here's where it redeems itself a little. She takes Foreigner's power ballad and blows it up into a gospel crescendo. For me, it's one of her best covers. Dramatic, heartfelt, vocally stunning, and I love how it transitions from languishing into I Want to Know What Love Is. So why did I play this album so much if I don't think it's that great? Timing, I think. It was 2009. I was living in Leeds, working in Manchester, commuting daily back and forth, hours of train journeys every day. And Memoirs became the soundtrack. Not because it was amazing, but because it was there. It flowed. It didn't demand too much. And it passed the time. And that's why I think it's my most scrobbled Mariah record, if you know what scrobbling means. It's about circumstance, really, not entirely quality. Memoirs works better as background music than as a focal listen. Smooth, cohesive, but lacking in real peaks. It's not a disaster, it's just fine. Okay, in at number 11, this one is going to get me cancelled by the locals, I think. It's the Emancipation of Mimi. By 2005, the narrative around Mariah Carey was grim. Glitter had been branded a disaster, Charmbracelet had been politely ignored, and the tabloids had really written her off. Enter the Emancipation of Mimi. Marketed as her comeback, her return to form, it was more than just hype. This record reintroduced Mariah to the world. It's Like That set the tone. Produced by Jermaine Dupri, brassy, confident. It was a statement. Mariah was back to having fun. The video flowed directly into We Belong Together, which created a mini story arc that was clever packaging in the pre-visual album era. Then, We Belong Together happened. 14 weeks at number one, nearly tying One Sweet Day. It dominated radio, weddings, breakups, you name it. It became the Mariah song for a new generation. And hilariously, it blocked her own single, Shake It Off, from reaching number one, meaning she sat at number one and number two simultaneously on the Billboard Hot 100. Only Mariah would stop herself from getting a 20th number one. Shake It Off itself deserved to be a chart topper. Slick, addictive, with one of her most effortless choruses. Mine Again is lush, sultry balladry. Stay the Night is moody and soulful, and it's a real highlight on the album for me. Get Your Number with Jermaine Dupri is cheeky fun and very mid-2000s in the best way. Say Something with Snoop Dogg is sleek. Pharrell's production giving it bounce. The album closes with Fly Like a Bird, a soaring gospel ballad that became a staple in her live shows. She performed it at the Grammys in 2006, and it was one of those moments where the industry had to admit she still got it. And then came the Ultra Platinum edition. Don't Forget About Us was added, and that went straight in at number one, her 17th at the time. We also got the We Belong Together remix, which, spicy take, I actually prefer to the original. Sacrilege? No. Taste. So why isn't Mimi higher on my list? Because as much as I admire it, I don't love it. This album is precision engineered to appeal to the masses. It's consistent, it's polished and safe. The Mariah album for casual listeners. For me, it doesn't have the chaos or experimentation of Rainbow or the emotional gut punch of Butterfly. It's triumph through calculation, not catharsis. But credit where credit's due, the Emancipation of Mimi was the record that reminded the world that Mariah Carey wasn't going anywhere. It's not my top tier, but it's an album that pulled her back into the center of pop culture. Next up, Charmbracelet. On paper, this is kind of wild, but hear me out. Charmbracelet is tricky. It arrived just 15 months after Glitter, with Mariah signing to Island Def Jam, still bruised from the whole Virgin $80 million debacle. Critics were not kind, and her voice, still in recovery from nodules and stress and exhaustion, was thinner than we'd ever heard it, but dismissing it entirely misses the quiet resilience baked into this record. Through the Rain was the lead single, an empowerment ballad meant to be her Hero 2.0. And I get it. After Glitter, she needed to signal survival. But it felt obvious, even a little forced. The video hammered home the theme of perseverance, but it didn't really connect in the way that it should have. Then came Boy, I Need You, produced by Just Blaze with Cameron. At the time, I thought it was clunky. In hindsight, it's aged into a quirky bop, more fun than I'd really given it credit for. The album itself is dotted with gems. You Got Me is a track I still come back to, sultry and understated. You Had Your Chance has real attitude. Lullaby is hypnotic, hushed and underrated. Subtle Invitation is jazzy and experimental, the kind of left turn that Mariah doesn't really get enough credit for. And Clown deserves its own paragraph. So her first proper Eminem diss, responding to his cut Superman. At the time, it felt petty, honestly. In retrospect, it's kind of genius. Without Clown, we don't get Obsessed. The Lows. Irresistible West Side Connection is dreadful. Easily my least favorite Mariah song, I think. I skip every time. And her cover of Bringing on the Heartbreak is fine also, but felt kind of unnecessary to me. There are emotional highs too. Sunflowers for Alfred Roy is a touching tribute to her father, who had recently passed away. My Saving Grace marked the start of her gospel streak, a faith-driven through line she'd return to with every era. A little bit of trivia for you. Yours was originally recorded as a duet with Justin Timberlake, but thanks to label drama, it never came out. Honestly, good. He didn't deserve her spotlight. Charmbracelet is patchy, sure, but it's not the disaster that critics made it out to be. It's a bruised, vulnerable record with flashes of brilliance worth revisiting. Okay, on to number 9, Glitter. Glitter was never the flop you think it was. Glitter is one of those albums where the myth has almost swallowed the music. Everyone remembers the film flop, the tabloid pylon, the end of Mariah headlines. But here's the truth. The soundtrack itself is fabulous. Camp, colorful, well-produced, and completely misunderstood. Context first. 2001 was supposed to be Mariah's coronation. She'd signed an $80 million recording contract with Virgin, the biggest in history at that time. She was starring in her first feature film, producing the soundtrack, and this was meant to be her peak. Instead, it became the low point of her entire life. The film tanked, the album underperformed in the US, and the press went in for the kill. If you strip away the gossip and actually listen to the record, there's so much to love. The production is immaculate. Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis handled a chunk of the album, the same team behind Janet Jackson's Imperial phase, and their fingerprints are all over this album. Let's talk singles. Loverboy was the lead, and yes, it got tangled up in the sample drama, but commercially, it was actually the best-selling single of 2001 in the United States. It peaked at number 2 on Billboard, but thanks to discounted pricing and heavy physical sales, it sold over 500,000 copies. So calling it a flop is pure revisionist history. And the video, directed by David LaChapelle, is pure cam. Mariah in a racetrack jumpsuit, flag girl glam, neon everywhere. Campus Christmas. Now, the deep cuts. This is where Glitter really shines, in my opinion. Lead the Way is one of Mariah's greatest ballads, full stop. Vocally staggering, emotionally raw, and with a climax too far is devastating. Her A Star Is Born moment, long before Lady Gaga. It should have been huge. Reflections, Care Enough is a stripped back, haunting ballad, and Twister closes the album with quiet devastation. It was written about the suicide of a friend of Mariah's. It's really, really sad. And it's not all heavy. Don't Stop Funkin' for Jamaica is chaotic but fun, full of energy. All My Life is glossy up-tempo brilliance. Want You with Eric Benet is a highlight for me personally. Smooth, sensual, and underrated. And her cover of Didn't Mean to Turn You On is kitsch, yes, but in the context of this neon-soaked soundtrack, it works really well. What's wild to me is how much the visuals mirrored the music. Saturated colors, disco sparkle, early 2000s excess. In hindsight, it's obvious. Glitter was camp before the culture was ready to reclaim camp. That's why when the hashtag Justice for Glitter campaigns resurfaced years later, the album finally charted again at number 1 on iTunes because the Lambs knew it deserved better. Glitter isn't just not a flop. It's one of her best produced records. The film may have collapsed under its own weight, but the soundtrack is pure joy for anyone willing to revisit it without all the baggage that was attached to it at the time. Up the list we climb, on to number 8. Emotions. Just a year after her debut, she released Emotions, an album that's often treated like a footnote, but really it's her flex record. The debut proved she could sing, but Emotions proved she could do anything. Let's start with the title track. Emotions was Mariah's 5th consecutive number 1 single, tying the Jackson 5 record at the time. And it's basically a whistle note marathon. She throws them in at the start, the middle, the end, like she was daring anyone to doubt her range. It's a joyous, gospel-inflected dance track that still sounds fresh today. Then there's Make It Happen. For me, this is one of the great Mariah songs, not just of this era, but of her whole career. Written about her early struggles in New York, it's a motivational anthem. If you believe in yourself enough and know what you want, you're going to make it happen. It's gospel fire. It's self-help before Instagram influencers. And it's still a live show staple that never fails to bring the house down. Can't Let Go is another jewel, co-written with Carole King. It's heartbreak drama delivered with precision. A ballad that shows restraint, which was rare for an early 90s Mariah track, and that's what makes it so effective. Other highlights, To Be Around You is one of my favorites. It's breezy and underrated, one of those tracks that really shows her lightness of touch. And You Don't Remember is a gorgeous ballad that doesn't get enough love. So Blessed is lush, syrupy, but beautiful if you're in the right mood. Until the End of Time is pure wedding song Mariah. Sentimental, but sincere. And then there's The Wind, a bold closer, sparse, jazzy, melancholic. It's her most experimental song up to that point, and it proves she wasn't just a pop belter. She was a musician. It's also one of those tracks where you can hear influences peeking through, the jazz, the gospel, the R&B, all colliding in one place. I don't listen to it enough, actually. Commercially, Emotions didn't hit the same heights as her debut, and that's probably why it's sometimes overlooked. But artistically, it's fascinating. It showed her versatility and gave her the confidence to start pulling away from Sony's adult contemporary straitjacket that they had her locked in. I don't put Emotions on front to back that often, but its highlights, Emotions, Make It Happen, Can't Let Go, in permanent rotation for me. They're foundational Mariah songs. So yes, it's uneven, and not every track is a classic, but it's joyful, bold, and a clear step forward toward the freedom of Daydream and Butterfly. Transitional Mariah, sure, but transitional Mariah was still dazzling. Next up, and in at number 7, is Caution. By 2018, the narrative around Mariah Carey was shifting again. She'd already cemented her legacy decades earlier. But the question was, could she still make a record that felt relevant without pandering? Caution answered that question with a resounding yes. In fact, it wasn't just a late career triumph, it was one of the best reviewed albums of her entire career. Critics and Lambs were, for once, completely aligned. Part of what makes Caution so effective is its brevity. 10 tracks, 38 minutes, no filler, no sprawling ballads, no unnecessary reprises, just sleek, modern, concise pop R&B. It feels deliberate in a way that her longer, more indulgent albums didn't. She trimmed the fat and delivered something that was lean and cohesive. Let's start with the singles. GTFO was the teaser, and while it's not one of her strongest songs, it was a smart move. The phrase itself is memeable, tailor-made for reaction GIFs and social media posts. Even pre-TikTok, Mariah knew how to create a lyric that people would quote. With You was the real single, a lovely, understated ballad, simple, classic Mariah without being overwrought. It didn't light up the charts, but it showcased that she still had the ability to deliver a ballad with restraint and beauty. The title track, Caution, is icy perfection. Minimalist production, hypnotic delivery, and one of her coolest songs in years. A No-No is cheeky and irresistible, interpolating Lil' Kim's Crush on You, playful, confident, and endlessly replayable. And The Distance with Ty Dolla $ign is pure triumph. Now for the deep cuts. Giving Me Life is the crown jewel of this album. 6 minutes of psychedelic, sprawling brilliance featuring Blood Orange and Slick Rick. It shifts moods, stretches time, and feels both retro and futuristic at the same time. It's one of the boldest songs of her entire career. Other standouts, One More Again, playful and infectious. 8th Grade, I love, produced by Timbaland, finally giving us the Mariah Timbaland collab we didn't know we needed. Lush, moody, gorgeous. Stay Long Love You is breezy fun, but not a career highlight, but a nice addition. And then Portrait, the closer, an intimate, introspective, quiet reminder of her vulnerability. Think Looking In. Commercially, Caution debuted in the Billboard 200 Top 5, her highest album in years. But more importantly, it reminded critics that Mariah wasn't just a legacy act coasting on her catalog. She was still capable of creating music that felt current, stylish, and forward-thinking. I saw Mariah on the Caution World Tour in Chicago, and she was radiant. The set list was sharp, her voice was in good shape, and the energy in the room was pure joy. And afterwards, we had an amazing deep dish, which I like to think Mariah herself would have approved of. Caution deserves to be higher in my ranking than it is. It's not just a good late career album. It's a genuinely excellent Mariah Carey record, full stop. If it had been released in 1999 or 2005, people will be talking about it as one of her greats. While it sits at number 7 for me, don't take that as a slight. In a catalog this deep, being in the top 10 is no small feat. Caution is concise, sleek, and quietly brilliant, a record that grows stronger every time I listen to it. Now, on to number 6, the debut, Mariah Carey. Vision of Love didn't just launch Mariah Carey. It launched 90s pop vocal culture. The debut is where the legend begins. Vision of Love wasn't just a single, it was a manifesto. The melisma, the control, the sheer audacity of those whistle notes. Every singer in the 90s tried to copy it. Beyonce, Christina, Ariana, all students of this one record. The album itself is front-to-back confident. Someday gave us New Jack Swing Mariah. There's Got to Be a Way, it's one of my personal favorites, showed her social conscience early, proof she wasn't just here to sing love songs. Vanishing is stripped back, gospel, piano, and voice, and proof that she could slay without production fireworks. Love Takes Time, a late addition to the album, became a #1 hit, a reminder that Mariah Carey didn't waste singles. All in Your Mind demonstrates the incredible whistle register control that she has, putting it front and center. My personal favorite album track is Them From Up Above. It's dreamy and celestial, a moment that feels almost too delicate for a debut. And then there's Prisoner, Mariah Carey rapping. The key thing about the debut is it wasn't just vocal pyrotechnics. Why? She wrote or co-wrote every track. And that was unheard of for a new female pop star in 1990. Mariah Carey wasn't just the voice, she was the pen. By the time the album cycle ended, she'd racked up 4 #1s in a row. It was a juggernaut introduction, but it also laid out the blueprint for 90s pop balladry. The debut is stronger than most of her 2000s records. Yes, it's a bit dated, but it's also undeniable. We've reached the top 5. And in at number 5 is E=MC². If the Emancipation of Mimi was Mariah's triumphant I told you so, E=MC² was her victory lap. Only this time, she let her hair down. Released in 2008, it took everything that worked on Mimi and amped it up. Bigger beats, brighter hooks, more playfulness. This isn't a record about proving herself. It's just Mariah having fun. And you can hear that in every corner of the album. The opener, Migrate, sets the tone. Produced by Danger, hot off of Britney's Blackout, it's futuristic, strutting, and cool in a way that instantly reminds you Mariah was still plugged into the zeitgeist. The feature from T-Pain only adds to the late 2000s brilliance. I still catch myself humming it randomly around the house, which tells you something about its staying power. Then came the lead single, Touch My Body. Camp brilliance. Mariah cheekily telling us,
if it's a camera up in here, then I best not catch just look on YouTube.
When YouTube was still in its adolescence, that lyric is so ahead of its time, and the Dave Meyers produced video with Jack McBrayer from 30 Rock is hilarious, playful, self-aware, and pure pop theater. There's a reason it became her 18th #1 single, extending her record and proving yet again that she knew exactly how to make a hit. The collaborations are strong across the board. Cruise Control with Damian Marley blends reggae into her pop R&B palette in a way that feels natural, not forced, even the patois. And That Chick is one of my personal highlights. Disco Sparkle, Stargate production, and a Michael Jackson sample that makes it glide. I'll Be Loving You Long Time is pure joy, breezy, summery, and one of those tracks that instantly lifts your mood whenever you listen to it. But it's not all carefree. Side Effects is the emotional anchor of the album, I would say. It's a brutally honest look back at her marriage to Tony Mottola, addressing the control, the toxicity, the scars, dark production, raw lyrics, and a performance that feels both vulnerable and defiant. It's one of the most confessional songs she'd ever written to that point. Other gems, Thanks for Nothing is classic Mariah shade wrapped in melody. OOC is underrated and fun, a proper bop, as the kids say. For the Record is a meta moment. Mariah referencing her own past hits, weaving her discography into the lyrics. It's indulgent, yes, but she's earned it. And then the closer, I Wish You Well. A gospel ballad that strips everything back to piano and voice. It's faith-driven, it's intimate, and one of her most moving album closers. Now, the duds. I Stay in Love is a fine ballad, but as a single, it's a head-scratcher to me. It's not single material when you've got much stronger songs sitting there. And then there's Bye Bye. Look, I know it's meant to be a universal ballad of remembrance, but to me, it's cloying and dull. I can't sugarcoat it. Bye Bye is awful. Cancel me. I don't care. And add Last Kiss to the skip list too. It's not offensive, it's just forgettable. For me though, E=MC² isn't just about the music. It's tied to a time in my life. The summer of 2008, living in Leeds, doing theater productions. I was in the Full Monty and High School Musical around that time, and I blast this album on the trains, walking in the sun, in rehearsal breaks. It's carefree, creative, fun, and the record that perfectly captured that moment in my life. E=MC² is better than Mimi. It may not have the same critical narrative, but it's more fun, more vibrant, and more Mariah. The sound of her being personal and playful at once. And honestly, that's the Mariah I love the most. Okay, in at number 4 is Butterfly. Butterfly is Emancipation on wax. Mariah breaking free in real time. If Daydream was the hinge between eras, Butterfly was the emancipation. This is Mariah Carey cutting ties, breaking free, and stepping into her artistry in full. It's her favorite of her own albums, and it's not hard to see why. Let's start with Honey, the cheeky, effervescent lead single produced with Puff Daddy and Q-Tip. It was the first time we saw Mariah fully lean into hip-hop on a lead single, not just as a remix or something she was allowed to do by the label, but as the main event. The video sealed the deal. Bond parody, bikinis, pool diving, jet skis, Mariah dancing in a way that looked good, cheeky glamour everywhere. And it was the first time the general public, I think, saw Mariah as playful and sexy, not just a ballad songbird. Then there's the title track, Butterfly. This song is the mission statement. It's wistful, it's aching, soaring. It's about letting go, about freedom, about transformation, knowing the backstory, her separation from Tommy Mottola, the stranglehold of Sony loosening, makes it almost unbearably poignant. It's both deeply personal and universal. My All is, for me, one of Mariah's 5 greatest songs ever. A ballad so devastatingly beautiful that it still floors me every single time. The flamenco guitar motif, the hush of the verses, the chorus that opens like a wound, and the live performances. Her 1998 VH1 Divas live rendition is jaw-dropping. She didn't just sing it, she inhabited it. Breakdown is pure lamb catnip, a song that never became a massive single, but is widely beloved as one of her most inventive. It's a perfect example of her fusing R&B melodies with hip-hop sensibility. Fans still reference it constantly because it feels like our song, not the general public's, but one that belongs to the core fan base. The Roof is another high point, sampling Mobb Deep's Shook Ones. It's effortlessly cool. It captures the tension and allure of a fleeting romance with such atmosphere that it is basically a short film in song form. Critics often cite it as one of her best deep cuts. For once, they're right. And then there's Outside, possibly her most personal song ever. It's about growing up biracial in a world that constantly tried to categorize her as being white or black. It's about never fully belonging. The pain in her delivery is palpable. You don't need to know her biography to feel it, but when you do, the song becomes even more searing. It's not just personal, it's confessional. Other notable moments: Fly Away, Butterfly Reprise, a euphoric disco moment tucked into the middle of such a introspective record was a burst of light. I love The Beautiful Ones with Drew Hill. Divisive, yes, but I find it lush and melodramatic in exactly the right way. Vocally, Butterfly marked a shift. Gone with her endless melismatic runs and constant whistles. Instead, she leaned into more breathy tones and a more textured delivery. Intimacy. Critics mistook it for vocal decline. In reality, it was vocal evolution. She was learning restraint, learning that sometimes the quietest notes can cut the deepest. Butterfly isn't her best album. It's her bravest. So while it sits at number 4 in my ranking, make no mistake, Butterfly is the sound of freedom, and freedom never ages. In at number 3 is Rainbow. Rainbow is messy, political, chaotic, and that's exactly why I love it. Released in 1999, it was Mariah's last studio album for Sony, and you can feel the tension of an artist and a label pulling in different directions. That's why it's eclectic to the point of chaos, but that's exactly what makes it brilliant, in my opinion. The lead single, Heartbreaker, was pure pop spectacle. The video, set in a cinema with Mariah fighting her alter ego, is still one of her best visuals. Jay-Z's feature was forward-thinking for the time, and as usual, Mariah was a step ahead of the industry. The remix with Debrat and Missy Elliott might be even better, completely reimagining the track in true Mariah remix fashion. Then there's Can't Take That Away, Mariah's theme. This wasn't just a ballad, it was a fight. Mariah had to battle Sony to get it to be released as a single, and when you hear the lyrics, it's obvious why. It's about resilience and about holding on to your inner truth, no matter what's thrown at you. It's a protest song wrapped in a pop ballad, and you can hear the subtext. It's Mariah pushing back against Tommy Mottola and the label control that she had been stuck in for so long. The deep cuts are as wild as they are wonderful. Bliss is an otherworldly 5-minute trip into whistle register sensuality. It's basically Mariah inventing ASMR before anyone even knew what it was. After Tonight, written with Diane Warren, is prom night melodrama dialed to 11. Say what you will about Warren, but when Mariah sings one of her torch ballads, it soars. Crybaby with Snoop is one of my favorites here. Moody, late night, full of attitude. It's Mariah sulking in the best possible way. And then there's Petals, which is quietly devastating. Reading her memoir years later made it clear just how personal this song was, dealing with her fractured family and painful relationships. It's delicate, sad, and utterly real. Against All Odds is her take on the Phil Collins classic. It's often dismissed, but I think it's strong. She doesn't try to overpower the original, she inhabits it. And Thank God I Found You, which closes the record, is pure gospel pop uplift. Slightly saccharine, sure, but it works as a big crescendo for the record. It's also worth noting the collaborators. Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis came on board here, and their chemistry with Mariah was immediate. Their influence is all over tracks like Petals and Can't Take That Away. For me, Rainbow also comes with personal nostalgia. I used to play it on repeat while working at Best Jeanswear in Leeds, and it always sparked debates with my colleagues. This was the era of Whitney Houston's My Love Is Your Love, so the Mariah versus Whitney arguments were constant. I worked with a guy called Joel, and he was Team Whitney, and I was firmly in Camp Mariah. Looking back, both albums are untouchable, but Rainbow was my hill to die on at the time. Commercially, Rainbow broke her streak of #1 albums in the US. It peaked at #2, a first since Merry Christmas not to hit the top. But chart peaks don't really tell the whole story. Artistically, this was Mariah loosening the reins, leaning into chaos and giving us something gloriously imperfect. Rainbow isn't just eclectic, it's political. Every choice on this album, the collaborators, the remixes, the battles over singles, was Mariah staking her claim to freedom before leaving Sony. That's why it's messy, and that's why it's essential. In at #2 is Music Box. Released in 1993, this is the record that transformed her from a US hitmaker into a global superstar. It was warm, restrained, endlessly listenable, and one of the best-selling albums of all time with around 28 million copies sold worldwide. Let's start with the singles. Dream Lover was the lead, and it's breezy perfection. A light looping groove, a chorus you can't shake, and Mariah in playful mode. It felt more relaxed than the vocal acrobatics of her first 2 albums, and audiences ate it up. Then came Hero, a song Mariah herself didn't love at first. She famously wrote it for Gloria Estefan, and it never really connected with it, but fans did. It became her anthem, the song that people cling to at weddings and funerals and school assemblies and charity events, and whether she likes it or not, Hero is one of her defining moments still to this day. Anytime You Need a Friend is my personal highlight of the singles. It's gospel drama in full effect. The choir, the key change, the sheer power of it. It's one of those songs that proves she could step into Whitney's lane and hold her own, while still sounding completely like Mariah. Never Forget You is timeless. It could be released today and still resonate. A melancholic, mid-tempo ballad that captures longing in a way that just doesn't age. Now That I Know flips the mood completely, an upbeat bop that reminds you that you can do joy just as well as heartbreak. Now for the deep cuts. All I Ever Wanted and Everything Fades Away, which is actually just a bonus track on the Japanese version of the album, I think, were my adolescent lullabies. I would lie in bed, headphones in, replaying them every night. I was emo before emo. That kind of teenage melodrama that only feels right when it's scored by Mariah Carey ballads. And then there's Without You, a cover of the Harry Nilsson classic that became the Mariah ballad outside the US. In the UK, in Germany, across Europe, this was the song that introduced millions of people to her. For casual listeners, it's still the definitive Mariah Carey song. Her ability to take someone else's hit and stamp her identity all over it is extraordinary. Other overlooked gems include Music Box itself, a soft, intimate title track that feels like a lullaby, and Just to Hold You Once Again, another quietly heartbreaking moment. Commercially, Music Box was unstoppable. 28 million copies sold, top 10 charts everywhere, and singles dominating radio. But beyond numbers, what makes it endure is its restraint. Gone are the endless runs and the whistle note showpieces of her debut. Instead, she opted more for clarity and simplicity and emotional directness, and it worked. Music Box isn't her most exciting record, but it's her most bulletproof. It's the Mariah Carey album you can play front to back without skipping, and it still sounds classy 30 years later. Music Box is proof that sometimes the quietest Mariah is the most powerful Mariah. So yes, it's safe, it's polished, it doesn't have the chaos of Rainbow or the bravery of Butterfly, but it doesn't need to. Music Box was about building a global foundation, and she nailed it. And finally, if you're still watching this at this point, you made it. Well done. You made it. Well done. The album that changed music forever, Daydream. Daydream is the blueprint. It's the album that changed pop, R&B, and remix culture all at once. If you want to understand why Mariah Carey isn't just a great singer, but one of the architects of modern pop, you start with Daydream. Released in 1995, it's her sixth album, and in my view, her masterpiece. It's the moment she fused commercial dominance, artistic growth, and personal honesty into one package. And the ripple effects are still being felt today. Let's begin with the juggernaut, Fantasy. The solo version is pop perfection, bright and effervescent, sampling Tom Tom Club's Genius of Love, but it's the remix with Old Dirty Bastard that changed the game. This wasn't just a pop star dabbling in hip-hop. This was a genuine collaboration that married pop hooks to rap verses in a way that had never been done on such a mainstream scale. The Fantasy remix cracked the code, and suddenly every pop girl in the 2000s was chasing the formula. Beyoncé and Jay-Z, Britney and Pharrell, Christina and Redman, they all owe a debt to Mariah and ODB. But Daydream isn't a one-track story. It's stacked with classics. One Sweet Day with Boyz II Men spent 16 weeks at number one. At the time, it was the longest running number one in Billboard history. I'll admit, it's not my favorite personally, but you can't ignore its cultural weight. It was everywhere. Weddings, funerals, charity concerts. It became a song that people leaned on in moments of collective grief. Always Be My Baby is another highlight. Deceptively simple, endlessly replayable. Mid-tempo track so strong it became one of her defining hits. Jermaine Dupri's production gave it a bounce that still sounds fresh nearly 30 years later. It's the sound of Mariah doing effortless pop, which is harder than it looks. And then the deep cuts, which elevate Daydream into masterpiece territory. Underneath the Stars is 70s soul perfection, hazy, dreamy, nostalgic. It's one of my all-time favorite Mariah songs. The fact that it wasn't a massive single is criminal, but maybe that's why it feels like a secret handshake between lambs. Long Ago is smoky and sultry, pointing toward the R&B textures that she would fully embrace on Butterfly. It's a transitional song in the best sense, showing us really where she was heading. Melt Away, co-written with Babyface, is criminally underrated, satin smooth, intimate, and quietly one of the best tracks in her catalog. Even the interlude, Daydream interlude, matters. It's essentially a reworking of Fantasy, but it's Mariah asserting something she would go on to build her brand around. The remix isn't an afterthought with Mariah, it's an art form. She wasn't just indulging DJs, she was creating parallel universes for her songs, and that ethos carried her through the 90s and beyond. And then there's Looking In, the devastating album closer, a song she had to fight to include. Written in the third person, it's about the girl inside the golden world who feels misunderstood, isolated, insecure. It's Mariah breaking character and telling the truth about her troubled marriage to Tommy Mottola, about the cage of fame, about the loneliness beneath the gloss. It's one of her bravest songs, and it reframes the entire album. Looking In is the moment the mask slips. Once you've heard it, you can't unknow the cage. Context is everything here. By 1995, Mariah was already a superstar, but Daydream was the album that cemented her as more than just a voice. It showed that she was an innovator, a tastemaker, and a writer with something to say. Commercially, it sold over 20 million copies worldwide, and critically, it proved that she could compete with Whitney and Celine on their own turf and carve out her own lane at the same time. On a personal note, this album was my turning point as a fan. Hearing the Fantasy remix on the radio for the first time felt mischievous, like she'd smuggled the future into daytime pop. And that was the moment I realized she wasn't just performing songs. She was shaping culture. She doesn't get the credit she deserves. Butterfly may be her bravest, but her Daydream is her most important. It's the one where she balanced mass appeal with innovation, artistry with accessibility. It's the bridge that made Butterfly possible, and without it, her career trajectory looks very different. Daydream isn't just Mariah's masterpiece, it's pop music's blueprint. So why is it my number one? Because it captures everything Mariah Carey is about. Vocals that could flatten buildings, hooks that never leave your head, emotional truth tucked inside radio hits, innovation that reshaped the industry, and a final track that rips the mask off the diva myth. Daydream is the Mariah Carey album. Period. So that's my ranking of Mariah Carey's 16 studio albums. What would your ranking be? Do you think I'm delusional, on drugs? Should I be sent to the electric chair? Let me know what you think in the comments. If you haven't watched it yet, you can watch my first listen reaction to Here for It All right there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.